pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I want to start by thanking the Continental Village Firemen for hosting us tonight. It's nice to be down here. And thank you for coming out. My hope for this evening is just to provide clarity on things and to give people a chance to ask questions and get answers and not walk away without having those questions answered. And, maybe you're not going to be happy, but at least you'll have clarity. I mean, there are things we can do as a town that we have done. We don't control the Lakeland School District, so we don't have a lot of leverage there. But we put this forum together so that people could get the answers to questions they have and then provide some clarity for us also. Tonight we have our Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff with us. We do have a representative from Senator Susurino's office here. We have our Assessor Brian Kenny. And we have John Wolham from New York State here. We have Representative Benoit Alencall from Lakeland Central School District here also. There are handouts in the back in case anyone didn't get one, so please avail yourself to those. They'll be very helpful as the presentation goes along. With that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to John Woolman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Supervisor Shea, and thank you to the town for having me here this evening. As Supervisor Shea said, my goal here tonight is simply to try to explain the apportionment process for the Lakeland School District. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions. I've already been told that a lot of questions are anticipated. So I'm going to try to keep this presentation as short as possible because I'm also aware the town board has a full agenda after this meeting. So as Supervisor Shea noted, if you haven't already gotten the two handouts, and I'm going to spend most of the time on the PowerPoint, I'm going to recommend that you go back and grab a copy because we don't have any projection here this evening, and it's going to be much easier to follow along if you have the handout with you. I also just want to introduce Steve Hartnett, whom I work with. Steve is a direct liaison with Dutchess County and, of course, Putnam County. So happy he's here this evening. The first couple of slides that I just want to go through, and some of these I'm going to go through very, very quickly, just provide some basic definitions that are helpful to know when we're talking about school district tax apportionment. So an assessing unit. An assessing unit really is any political entity. It's typically a town or a city. Sometimes there are a few villages that have the authority to assess property for tax purposes. In the Lakeland School District, and you'll hear me say this a number of times, there are 6 assessing units, 3 in Putnam County, 3 in Westchester County. A taxing jurisdiction is any political subdivision that has the authority to raise tax. And of course, in this case, the Lakeland School District has that authority. Tax apportionment, that's why we're here this evening. Tax apportionment is the process by which a taxing jurisdiction, in this case, Lakeland School District, determines how much tax of the levy each of the 6 towns that have parts of the school district will pay. Again, we're going to talk about that a fair amount more. Flipping the page, equalization rate. The equalization rate is essentially a confirmation of the locally stated level of assessment. The equalization rate is intended to be a measure of the average percentage of market value that all properties on a town's assessment roll represent. So to give you an example, for 2015, the equalization rate in Philipstown was 46.50, and I'm talking 2015 because the example I'm using here for the apportionment of the school tax is based on what happened in 2015. So For 46.50, that essentially means that on average, all properties are assessed at 46.5% of market value using the valuation date applicable to that roll. And one of the reasons there has to be an apportionment process for the Lakeland School District and the majority of all school districts throughout the state is that the municipalities that make up a school district typically don't assess at the same value, at the same percentage. There is no legal requirement for them to do that. In some instances, for example, if you go to Dutchess County or if you go to some of the smaller school districts to the east in Putnam County, you may have school districts in which all of the towns are at 100%. Because those municipalities are doing reassessments. In most cases, that's not true. There's always at least one or more municipalities that have different equalization rates, which means they're not assessing at the same percentage of value. And a couple of simpler terms, budget and levy. The budget is the total amount of money that a taxing jurisdiction needs to do its job each year. And the budget includes the money from all sources. The levy, on the other hand, is important because the levy represents the amount of money that needs to be raised through the property tax. So essentially, the process here is a taxing jurisdiction decides how much money it needs, that's its budget. It determines sources of income other than property tax, whether that's state aid or whatever the source may be. It subtracts that from the budget, and the remaining number is the tax levy. That's how much has to be raised through the property tax. The next slide is simply a graphic representation of the Lakeland School District among the 6 municipalities in which the school district resides. So, again, I've kind of said already, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every slide individually, but this talks about the process I just described, where a taxing jurisdiction is going to decide how much money it needs to do its job. It's going to determine all sources of revenue or income outside of the property tax, and the difference, once it subtracts that from the budget, is going to be the tax levy. That's the amount to be raised through the property tax. I've got a slide here about how the tax rate is calculated. I'm going to skip that, and I'm going to go to the bottom slide of page 4, because this really gets into the heart of the tax apportionment process. There's a law, Real Property Tax Law 1314, that explains how tax apportionment works. And basically it says that, look, where you have a taxing jurisdiction that includes more than one town or city, or pieces of more than one town or city, the equalization rate has to be used to bring the taxable assessed value of that town up to 100% full value. Again, in Lakeland, there are 6 pieces. There are pieces of 6 towns that are in the Lakeland School District. And we'll go through some actual facts and figures in just a few minutes. But every one of those towns assesses at a different level of assessment. So unless the taxable assessed value is brought to 100% for all 6 of those towns, there is no fair way to determine how much property tax each segment should pay. So that's a critical part of this process. And I should also point out that the way the property tax works, regardless of whether we're talking about school tax or county tax or town tax or village tax or special district taxes, property tax simply means that your tax is based on your relative property value. That's why it's so important for the equalization rate to be used to bring everyone's assessment up to 100%, or in this case, 100% for purposes of determining how much tax is going to be allocated to each of the 6 municipal segments. So we have 3 towns that have pieces of Lakeland in Westchester County. Those are Cortland, Yorktown, and Somers. Cortland and Yorktown, as we'll see, represent, each of them are very, very large shares of Lakeland School District. Somers is far and away the smallest piece of the Lakeland School District. And one of the added complications in talking about apportionment for Lakeland is that nearly all municipalities in Westchester County use a prior year's roll to extend their school tax. That's not the case for the vast majority of places outside Westchester. They use a current year's roll. So for instance, in all 6 Putnam County towns, whether it's the school tax or the town-county tax, those tax bills are based on your current year roll. So the bills you get, that you just got for your school tax, those are based on your 2016 final roll. In Westchester, however, the 2016 school bills are actually based on a 2015 final roll, because that's the way their charter is set up. So then the question becomes, in the case of Lakeland, since we have 3 towns that use 1 year's standard and 3 towns that use a different year's standard, how do we make that fair? And the law says that even though they're using a prior year's roll, the solution is to use a prior year's equalization rate for all 6 towns. Again, since the equalization rate is the measure of value that those assessments represent, the law says that if the same year's worth of equalization rates are used to bring values current for all 6 towns, the apportionment of the tax will be fair. And again, understand that apportionment, the term that's most frequently used with apportionment is rough justice, that based on property value, taxable property value, each town is paying its relative share as measured by property value. So let's go to some, well, I've already covered this, but for Putnam County, you're using a current year's roll, but you're using a prior year's equalization rate. Again, the key here to the apportionment process in Lakeland is that the same year, the prior year equalization rates are used across the board for all 6 towns. Now, the last thing by way of introduction before we get into the actual numbers, at the bottom of page 5, there's a slide that provides some information about the basis for apportionment in the Lakeland School District for the 2015-2016 school year. These were the bills that you would have gotten September 1 year ago. So for that period, the budget was a little over $161 million. The tax levy was about roughly $112.5 million. Again, the difference between the two represents the amount of income the school district was able to get from sources other than property tax, because the goal here is to collect only what's necessary from the property tax. So it's that $112,478,132 figure that was the basis of everyone's 2015 property tax in the Lakeland School District. And again, it notes the 6 towns that are in the Lakeland School District, and it mentions once again that all 6 towns assess at a different level of assessment. So if we go to the next page, now we're going to look at actual numbers that hopefully will make this process a little bit clearer. And again, this is meant to represent what actually happened for your school bill in September of 2015, a year ago. So you're going to see in the chart at the top of page 6, you're going to see a line or a row for each of the 6 towns. The top 3 are the towns in Putnam County. You're going to see the taxable assessed value for the 3 towns in Putnam County. That is going to represent taxable assessed value from each town's 2015 final roll. And then you're going to see the 2014 equalization rate. And essentially, the taxable assessed value That's the total of each assessment roll less any exemptions, because of course, let me go through this and then I'll take questions. I should have said that up front, I'm sorry. So again, the idea here is that since only taxable value is going to pay the tax, this assessed total has to exclude the value of any exemptions, whether they're wholly exempt properties or partial exemptions, veterans exemption, senior exemption, so on and so forth. So essentially just using, well, let's take the second row for Philipstown. The taxable assessed value in Philipstown for the Lakeland School District for this particular year, for 2015, was $112,381,580. Your 2014, the town's 2014 equalization rate, which legally is the equalization rate that has to be used for the Lakeland School District apportionment, was 46.35. So your taxable assessed value, again, that $112 million figure, is divided by 0.4635, and the result is the implied full value of taxable assessments in the Philipstown segment of Lakeland. That's that $242+ million figure that you see over in the column titled Full Value for Apportionment. Essentially, the taxable assessed value in each of these 6 towns has to be converted to full value. That's where the equalization rate comes in. Again, it converts it to 100% full value, and a total full value is calculated. And you'll see that at the bottom. The total full value of Lakeland School District, based on taxable property value, is a little over $4 billion, just under $4.3 billion. So the next step is saying, well, okay, we know the full value for apportionment purposes in the Philipstown segment is this $242 million plus figure. What percentage of the total full value does that represent? And that's performed for each of the 6 towns. So reading across for Philipstown, again, this is rounded off. The calculations go out to about 6 decimal places. So this is rounded off. But for the town of Philipstown for 2015, taxable value in Philipstown represented about 5.65% of the total amount of taxable full value. Again, you're going to see that this has been calculated for each of the other 5 towns. The difference here is that for the 3 towns in Westchester, the taxable assessed value that is the starting point comes from the Westchester 2014 final rolls, because again, we're talking about 2015 school tax. So those 3 towns in Westchester use the 2014 final roll as the basis for each of those 3 taxable values. The rest of the process is the same. All 6 towns utilize their town-wide equalization rate as established for 2014 to produce the full value. And the shares, that column that reads percent share rounded, represents the share of taxable value that each town represents in the Lakeland School District. And again, it's worth reviewing the shares briefly. Each of the towns in Putnam County have a relatively small share. Of the 3 towns in Putnam, Philipstown has the largest. Again, for 2015, it's about 5.65. Carmel is smaller, 3.68. Putnam Valley is 1.86%. For the Westchester towns, as I said a couple of moments ago, Cortland and Yorktown, far and away, are the biggest shares each. Cortland is a little over 43% for 2015. Yorktown is a little over 45%. And the town of Somers is the smallest segment of the 6. It's under 1%. It's about 0.7% of the entire full value of the school district. So we said a few moments ago that the school district's levy, the amount it has to raise through property tax, is this $112,478,132 figure. Essentially, that figure is then divided by the percentage that each municipality represents of the total full value to determine how much of that $112 million figure it's going to be liable to pay. And that's how those individual levy amounts are calculated. So in the town of Philipstown, for 2015, your 2015 school tax about a year ago, all of the properties in Philipstown in the Lakeland School District were responsible for about a little over $6.4 million. At that point, that $6.4 million gets divided by your taxable value, your actual taxable value. A tax rate is determined, and then, of course, you end up receiving a bill. And that process is repeated in each of the other 5 towns for the Lakeland School District. So that's essentially the way the process works. And again, I wanted everybody to have a handout. I know it's hard to talk about, but at least you have something to refer to leaving the meeting. Now, why do taxes change? That's always a big question. There can be several different reasons, both at the apportionment level, which is what we've just talked about in this slide at the top of page 6, and then at the individual property level. So there can be changes in equalization rates. And I have a couple of slides that look at essentially what happens to apportionment, or what's happened to apportionment over roughly the last 15 years or so. So that might be helpful in terms of showing how things have changed or moved around. But essentially, where equalization rates change from one year to another, that indicates that values within a town may have gone up, they may have gone down overall, they may have stayed roughly about the same. So part of the dynamic in a school district like Lakeland, where you have pieces of 6 different towns, is how much those equalization rates have changed from one year to another. And the shorthand way of looking at this is, if an equalization rate goes up, unless a reassessment has been done, if an equalization rate goes up, it means that the static assessments represent a higher percentage of market value than they did. So that suggests that market values at the townwide level, or on average, are going down to some degree. On the other hand, if an equalization rate goes down, and again, absent a reassessment, it suggests that the static assessments on the town's roll now represent, to some degree, a smaller percentage of market value. So that suggests market values townwide, on average, are going up. So, of course, where you have a tax apportionment case, as in Lakeland, the issue from year to year is going to be, what is that relationship among the 6 towns? Which appear to be going up in value, which appear to be going down in value, which appear to be staying about the same. And depending on how that works in any given year, that can produce changes. It can produce increases or decreases to each town's share of the school tax. And of course, it's always relative to what happens with the other 5 towns. If the equalization rate suggests that all 6 towns are going up in value, but you have one that's going up much less than the other 5, well, that town is probably going to have an advantageous apportionment. It's probably going to have a smaller share relative to the others. So that's key to what happens in the apportionment from one year to another. In addition to that, there are influences at the individual property level. Has a property owner's assessment increased? Has it decreased? Was there new construction? Did someone go to the Board of Assessment Review and get a deduction? Did someone get a property tax exemption for which they formerly were ineligible? Or did someone purchase a property and an exemption held by the former owner, the seller, now has to be removed because the new owner doesn't qualify? These are all influences that will affect your property bill as an individual. So sometimes it can become a little difficult to say, well, why did my property tax bill go up so much when my neighbors didn't? Sometimes you really have to do a lot of looking to see what the individual answer is or what the specific answer is. If we go to page 7, and I apologize, I see there's a typo in the heading of the top slide. These two slides are really just meant to offer what's happened to the shares of all 6 towns over roughly a 15-year period. The top slide covers 2000 through 2011. The bottom slide covers 2012 through 2015. You can see that back in 2000, Philipstown's share of the Lakeland School District was 5.31%. And you can see that over time, it's moved around. There have been a couple of years where it's actually dipped slightly below 5%, 2001, 2005. Most years, it's been over 5%. The highest clearly was 2011, which, if I remember right, that was the last year I was here to do a presentation on this very subject, because there was a lot of concern about why did it increase so much. So it went up to 5.98%. That appears to be the highest it's been. Then if you look at the bottom slide that has the 4 most recent years, it fell back down to 5.46%. In 2014, it increased again to 5.89%. And 2015, it went down to 5.65%. And you can see patterns of change for any of the 6 towns in the school district. What I'd like to do, because I know it's hard to look at 15 different years and come up with some conclusions, so I'd like to turn the page and just look at the slide at the top of page 8. This describes the cumulative change in the levy for all 6 towns in the Lakeland School District from 2000 to 2015. So it's basically showing each town's share of the property tax in 2000, and it's being compared to what was then paid in 2015. And there's a percent share rounded. You can see on average at the bottom of that slide, the levy went up about 2.35 times. The percentage is 235, but the levy from 2000 to 2015, again, the levy is the amount raised by property tax. That school district-wide has gone up about 2.35 times. Philipstown's share for that 15-year period, or actually I think it's a 16-year period, is about 2.53%, a little over 2.53. So Philipstown's share has gone up a little more than the average school district-wide, the average district-wide increase in the levy. And you can see that there are differences among the other segments. The town of Somers, which has far and away the smallest segment, again, their segment represents about 7/10 currently, or at least for 2015, about 7/10% of the value, the taxable full value in Lakeland. Their share of the levy has gone up over 10 times since 2000. There are, Yorktown and Cortland, they're close to the average. Again, the average is about 2.35 times. Yorktown is just a little bit under. Their average increase in levy in that period is about 2.32. Cortland has gone up slightly over the average, 2.41. The other 2 towns in Putnam County, Carmel and Putnam, both have had increases that are noticeably lower than the average. Putnam Valley is about close to 1.95 times. Carmel is about 1.81. And again, ultimately, this is all based on the cumulative change in taxable full value for each of these 6 towns. There are just a couple of other slides here, and then I have some slides on reassessment. I'm not going to go through those in the interest of time, but I'll speak about that very briefly. before we get to that, the slide at the bottom of page 8 is simply meant to represent what property tax bills would look like for a $500,000 property in each of the 6 towns that are in Lakeland. So again, this is assuming that each property is worth $500,000. We're assuming an equitable assessment that they really are worth $500,000. We are also assuming that none of these properties have a property tax exemption, because of course that would also alter the amount of tax that property would pay. So we've taken the 2014 equalization rates, which again are the year of equalization rates applicable to the September 2015 school tax, and we've calculated what the $500,000 valued property would be worth or would be assessed at, assuming a fair assessment. And then we applied the actual tax rates that were extended for Lakeland schools for each of the 6 towns. And you will see that the calculated 2015 school taxes are all pretty close to one another. Again, this is assuming some hypotheticals, and hypotheticals aren't always there. But you'll see that for the 3 towns in Putnam County, the bill would be a little bit under $13,300 on average. For the 3 towns in Westchester County, it's a little under $13,100 for each. There is a reason why the 3 towns in Westchester are a little bit lower. Westchester County has chosen, and I don't remember or I don't know when they started doing this, but Westchester County takes some of its sales tax revenue and it applies it towards school tax levies paid by Westchester residents. So what you're seeing there, that roughly $200 or thereabout difference in the bill, represents the contribution from Westchester's sales tax revenue to the school tax levies. That's why those 3 Westchester towns in this hypothetical are just a little bit lower. And the only other slide here, which is really just some background data, this is just looking at the 4 school districts that have a piece in the town of Philipstown. So what we've done here, again, since we were talking about 2015, if you go to the second column from the right, this is showing the district's, each school district's taxable full value for 2015. We got the number of pupils for the 2015-16 school tax year from the State Education Department's property tax report card, and we're simply calculating the property value in each school district, the full property value per pupil, and the spending based on each school district's budget per pupil. That's really just meant as some background about each of the 4 school districts that have a piece of the town of Philipstown. And the tax rates, those are simply the tax rates that each Philipstown resident in each of these 4 school districts, that was applied to create their bill for 2015. So I know that there is a lot of concern about the level of school tax in Lakeland, certainly in the Philipstown segment. Again, that's part of the reason I was here almost 5 years ago. From our perspective, the best solution or the best recommendation we can offer to ensure a fair apportionment and fair property taxes at the individual property level is to do what's known as a reassessment. All of the towns in Putnam County did a reassessment for 1996. It was a county-wide project. Since then, 4 of the 6 towns, beginning in the early 2000s, I think around 2001, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the town, have chosen to maintain 100% assessments annually. The town of Carmel is in the process of doing a reassessment after about 20 years for 2017. Philipstown, for various reasons, hasn't been able to do one. And again, that's not a knock against the town. Reassessments require money, they require funding, they require a lot of planning. I certainly would not advocate anyone rush out and do a reassessment. But here's the reason why reassessments are important, not only for those of you in the Lakeland School District, but for folks in Philipstown town-wide. And again, you can review the slides on this at your leisure. The way the property tax works, well, again, all of you know, because you pay property tax, that property tax funds town, county, school, village if you're in one, and special district charges. Whether we like this or not, property tax is determined by property value. That's the way it works in New York. That's the way it works in virtually all states in the US. That's the way it works in most countries throughout the world. That property tax is based on property value. So the key thing here is that the assessment roll, which is the product that captures assessed value for all properties in Philipstown and any other assessing unit, to the degree those assessments don't reflect current value, there's always going to be a certain amount of inequity. Again, assessments, the assessments that appear on the town's roll, and I have to point out, this is not the fault of the town's assessor. It is not the case that the town's assessor is not doing his job. Essentially, unless there is a town-wide reassessment, the assessor is limited to making changes to assessed value on the basis of new construction, demolition, or, of course, implementing reductions that are determined by the Board of Assessment Review or that are decided judicially. The assessor by law can't go in and make, or I'm not saying the assessor can't, but the assessor is at risk at making market value changes if it's not done comprehensively. So for that reason, that's why reassessment, from our perspective, is the best solution. It would be something that would ensure that not only residents in the Lakeland School District, but residents throughout the town are paying their fair share to the greatest extent possible, no more or no less. And the only other thing I'm going to say, because I know folks have questions, there's a second handout. It's some tabular data, 2 pages, double-sided. This was done in a bit of a hurry, but I wanted to offer some information here. Now, the most recent assessment roll, of course, that the town has on file is 2016, and that was filed tentatively May 1st, and it was finalized on July 1st. There are certain specific standards that the town uses in assembling an assessment roll, whether it's for 2016 or any other year. There's a taxable status date, excuse me, there's a taxable status date, there's a valuation date, and then there's a level of assessment. Let me explain those very, very briefly. Taxable status date in Philipstown is March 1st, and that basically says whatever physically exists as of March 1st, 2016 should be reflected on the 2016 assessment roll. There's a valuation date. Any of you that have ever had an appraisal done for mortgage purposes or maybe just determining the value of your property, the first thing the appraiser is going to ask you is, what is the valuation date you want me to make this appraisal for? Valuation date, again, is the date at which value is established. And assessment rolls in that regard are no different than fee appraisals. They have to have a valuation date. The legal valuation date for the town of Philipstown is July 1st, and this is the valuation date in place for the vast majority of towns and cities throughout New York State. It's July 1st of the preceding year. So the values, the assessments that are on the 2016 roll are meant to represent a certain percentage of value as of July 1st, 2015. And finally, law in New York does not mandate the level of assessment, but it says that however you choose to assess, you have to treat property value uniformly. So for 2016, the town of Philipstown stated a level of assessment of 46.5%. Putting this all together, The assessments that are on the town's 2016 roll are meant to represent 46.5% of market value, with market value having been determined as of July 1st, 2015, and whatever physically exists as of March 1st, 2016, subject to assessment. Now, the purpose of this handout of sales is simply to show the year's worth of arm's length sales that took place prior to that July 1st, 2015 valuation date, because those are sales that we, DTF, would look at in doing an analysis of what the town's level of assessment is. And again, since we're here talking about a school district, the Lakeland School District, I sorted these by school district, and then within each school district, it's from lowest selling price to highest selling price. And the only point here was just to give you something to look at to show that there is variation in the relationship of selling prices or assessed values to selling prices. And that's frankly a natural occurrence in rolls, in assessment rolls, the more time goes by between reassessments. Typically, what people will observe is that properties at the higher value end will have lower levels of assessment relative to lower valued properties. So there's an inherent unfairness there. And again, I know obviously there's a lot of time, or there's a lot of agenda left on the town board's meeting, so I don't want to dwell on that. I just want to say that there is sales evidence here. I'm not saying that every sale here necessarily should be in here. These are supposed to represent all arm's length sales for that 1 year period. I did remove all the condominiums and a few sales that looked like they shouldn't have been in there. Possibly if someone scrutinizes this, you may find a few more. But again, I think if you look at this, you're going to see that there is variation from the town's average level of assessment based on selling price. So with that, I'm going to stop because I know there are questions, and I'll be happy to take any questions you have. And if there are questions I can't answer, I will get back to the town board with those answers. Sir.
My first question is on page 6, the top slide, the first table that you presented. The second column is titled taxable assessed value, and I wanted to clarify, is that for properties in the Lakeland School District or town-wide?
Yes. Sure. The question, and if I'm saying it wrong, let me know. The question from the gentleman was on the top slide on page 6, where the second column in that's labeled taxable assessed value, does that represent the taxable assessed value for each town that's in the Lakeland School District? Did I have the question?
Portion
Right.
in the Lakeland School District.
Yes, and the answer is yes. Because this is meant to represent the Lakeland School District apportionment, each of those 6 taxable values only represents taxable value that is in Lakeland in each of these 6 towns.
I have another question.
Sure.
So, and is the equalization rate established based on the property values in that school district section, or is it based on the town-wide numbers?
The gentleman's question was about the establishment of the equalization rate. Is it based only on the properties and the value in the segment, in the school district segment, or is it based town-wide? Equalization rates are based town-wide because the town is the assessing unit. So, and again, legally, an assessing unit is supposed to assess all property at the same level, whatever percentage that may be. So the equalization rate is established at the town-wide level. Sir.
Follow. So on that table on the top of page 6, so how many houses are in Philipstown for the $112 million number, and how many houses are in Portland for $34 million?
Okay, the gentleman's question is how many properties or homes are in each of the segments? And I apologize, I don't have that with me here this evening. That's something I would have to get back to you on.
Look at the map, the area, and again, this is, I could go over this, but area at Cortland represents is huge compared to the area that Philipstown represents.
Yeah.
So, are you saying that Lakeland, the little area in Philipstown, the Lakeland School District has, three times as many homes as the big area in Portland? Or is something else going on?
Yeah, the gentleman is asking about the relationship of the taxable assessed value to the number of properties. And unfortunately, I did not think to investigate how many properties are in each segment. I will get that information and get it back to the town board so they can distribute that. I guess essentially what this is saying is that all of the properties cumulatively in the segment have a taxable assessed value of the amount you see there, regardless of how many there are, approximately 112 million, and that translates to a full value for apportionment purposes of over 242 million. Whether there's a direct correlation to the number of properties and the increase in value, that I couldn't tell you offhand.
What this is implying is that the houses in Philipstown are assessed at a much higher level than the houses in Cortland. I could be wrong about that. That's what this.
Well, in terms of the...
Historically higher, that something's got to be going on here to make
Well,
Philipstown numbers so huge compared to everybody else.
Yeah, the gentleman's point or his question has to do with the difference in, and again, if I'm saying this wrong, correct me, but I think what you're questioning is why the taxable assessed value in Philipstown appears to be so much higher than Cortland or Yorktown. And the answer there is yes, it is much higher because Philipstown is assessing at a significantly higher percentage of value than either Cortland or Philipstown. If we take a look, for purposes of this apportionment, Philipstown's taxable assessed value is at 46.35%. Cortland and Yorktown are both very, very small percentages. Cortland's percentage, based on the equalization rate, their assessments only represented 1.88% of value for that particular year. Yorktown's assessments only represented 2.51% of value for that particular year. That's why it sometimes can be misleading, well, it is misleading, to take the taxable assessed value by itself. That's why for apportionment it has to be converted to full value, because if you take a look at the full value column, 2 over in there, both Cortland and Yorktown's full value, Cortland is over 1.8 billion and Yorktown's is over 1.9 billion.
One more question. So
Sure.
If, this is hypothetical, if the assessed values of all of the 6 towns were roughly the same, whatever the rate, it doesn't matter what the rate is, it could be 100%, it could be 80%, all done at the same level, the same rate, would the share of a levy be any different? I'm not sure
Yeah.
if the calculation of the full value apportionment actually represents what's supposed to represent. So if everybody, if we waved the magic wand and said all the 6 towns would assess their houses at the same rate, would Philipstown's levy still be 6.1?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and just to try to restate it, what the gentleman is asking is if hypothetically all 6 towns were assessing at 100%,
Whatever the amount is, I'm not sure what's the right number, but at the same level.
well, let me use 100% just because that would imply that each town has done a reassessment, which would be the fairest way of getting at what the real market value is. So hypothetically, if each town was at 100%, the actual taxable assessed values on the roll, the cumulative amount for each town, would determine the percentage. And your question is, would these percent shares change as a result of that? I'm going to say up front, I can't give you a definitive answer, and let me explain why. If the equalization rate work that DTF does is accurate, then I would expect they would stay roughly about the same. But, and this is a key but, because so many of these towns have not done a recent reassessment, The proof of that pudding, the proof of whether the full value would really turn out to be this amount, would be seen if, well, I'll say when, because I want to try to be optimistic here, when they eventually do a reassessment. If the equalization rate has captured on average the appropriate value, it shouldn't change dramatically. But again, both of these towns, Cortland and Yorktown, New York State started issuing equalization rates, I believe it was around 1952. And when I looked back at the equalization rate history, it was clear that neither town had done a reassessment since the point in time New York started issuing equalization rates. So the values, the assessments on each town's roll are very old, and that's the proof in the pudding there is how low the equalization rate is. 2.5% in one and under 2% in the other. So the question then becomes how accurate, even though this is a town-wide average, but if you were to go, not you, but if the town were to do a reassessment, how accurate are those individual property values, and would the town's cumulative value change as a result of reinitializing that, setting it all to 100% of current market value? And the answer is that if I knew the answer to that, frankly, I would probably be off making a fortune in real estate, because this is not something that we could tell right off the rip. The only way anyone would really know the answer to that is the result of a reassessment when each of these towns does such a project.
I think this is a fundamental question, because the equations you're using to come up with the full value for a portion, we have no idea whether the numbers that you arrive at are actually balanced in a
Yeah.
way that takes into account all the discrepancies. And,
Yeah.
and the only way to do that would be to go house by house. I'm not
Mhm.
saying everybody should do this, but
Right.
and my guess is that if you did it this hypothetical way, these numbers in the last levy column would be significantly different.
Yeah, the gentleman's,
I'm not sure this calculation, I think this calculation is bogus, that's what I'm saying.
yeah, the gentleman's point is that he thinks that the results of this distribution would be much fairer. Essentially, what I hear you saying is that if the municipalities did a reassessment. And look, I'm not going to disagree about the need for reassessment. We are advocates of reassessment, but there is no law in New York State that requires reassessment,
That's my point.
nor can we compel a municipality to do it.
This is the point I'm getting at. So we have our state representatives here. I think there needs to be a push at the state level to require all localities, whatever that means, to reassess at the same time. Right? So that we don't have these bogus calculations, because nobody can prove to me that this column, full value of apportionment, is actually representing what it should be. It's just a way of getting to a number. And it could be completely off. No one knows whether it's on or off. So our representatives should work with their colleagues in Albany to say every locality has to reassess every 5 years.
Do you wanna-
every 10 years, whatever it is.
Do you wanna speak to
so
that?
these discrepancies can be eliminated completely.
Okay. Sandy Galiff, Assemblywoman. I'm actually chair of the Real Property Tax Committee in Albany in the Assembly. And I've had a bill for the last 8, 9, 10 years to require reassessment. I've changed it. One time it was 5 years. The other was every 4. I don't know that you could all do it at one point, because I don't know whether the industry has enough people to go out and do all this at once. I don't know.
That's a lot of money if it isn't.
Right. But I can't actually get this bill out of the Assembly. I get it out of my committee. Senator Betty Little has often had it in the Senate, hasn't moved, because generally people get very afraid, generally, of reassessment of properties. I have to tell you, I live in Ossining. We have just gone through reassessment in Ossining. We hadn't done it for like 44 years. And, I was very much in favor of it. And again, about a third of the people got an increase in their assessment, but they might have gotten an increase too because they added something to their house. value of the house is greater. And then a third of the people pretty much stayed the same, and a third of the people went down. I was one of the third that went up, but it was right. It was right. And it was so interesting in our community. My daughter lives down the street. Hers went down. My son's went up. Everybody was doing, something happened differently. But I think we can understand, and I actually, after the reassessment, because they gave us, and John was very helpful in asking to pull us through this. He was there at all the town board meetings to answer questions, which was helpful. But, I allowed the person to come in and look at my house. Some of the people did not do that. So often their assessment might be a little higher, because nobody knew what was in the house. How many bathrooms were there? What had you done? Whatever. But once I got the form, and then I was able to go back and say, my basement really isn't finished. So, I did a little complaining as we went along and got a little bit of relief from it, as a number of people did, if the inspector, we didn't think, had done the right job. But they also gave us an analysis of some of the other houses in the district that were somewhat like yours. I mean, you never really have a real match, but they were somewhat like mine. And I went around in my car, and I looked at them, and I said, oh, and then this and that. And then I actually, looking at them, thought that they had done a really good job at reassessing my house. But then I also called a broker, because I wanted him also to do an analysis, and it really came out just right. I did owe more money on my house. It was more value than I had thought. And I think we were at 18%, John? I can't remember in Austin.
Yeah, 16,
18%, just like you see some of these. And I just think it's a good thing to do, but back to trying to get the state legislature to do it, I think is really hard. And I think if you can work through your community to get it done, that would be very helpful. We did it in Austin, we did it in Greenberg this year. We actually passed legislation to try to help the communities with the people that, if you had a significant increase in your assessment, which meant an increase probably in your taxes, that we passed legislation for those two communities to allow you to pay it over a 2-year period of time. So you didn't get hit with it immediately. Yes, you're going to have to pay it, but you also, if you don't like what they did, you always have small claims. You always can go to your Board of Assessment and Review. You can do certiorars, whatever. Anyway, it's work for us. I'm sorry, I don't think I can get it done on a state level.
Well,
I try.
I'd like to ask the representative of Ms. Serino whether you would support that.
I do believe the senator is in favor. Yes, of course. Hi, I'm from Senator Serino's office, and I believe I spoke to many of you. We have spoken with a few of the board members as well, and the senator comes to the same conclusion, as well as Sally Galiff and with John, that going at 100% is the fair and right way to go. It'll be fair for all residents because you do share in the tax rate, more of a fair rate. And he's the expert. Putnam Valley's at 100%, and if you've seen those calculations there, how they're being taxed fairly, whether you have a smaller house or a larger property or not. It's just fair all around by doing it that way.
So I'd like to interject for 1 second. That's all fine and well if that bill can get passed, but if there's no state funding for it, that's one issue. The other thing is the New York State tax cap, which started out ostensibly at 2%. It was never 2%. The first year we were at 1.7%. This year we're held to a 0.6% tax increase. So where does the money come for a $300,000 program, a $300,000 plus program, when we can't exceed the tax cap? That's the thing we find ourselves. We've been working in-house on an in-house reval for years, trying to go around house by house to get all that documentation together, something we can afford while staying within the tax cap. But we are handcuffed because even if, and this is a larger question, is eventually municipalities will become so cornered by the tax cap that we can't entertain doing anything. If we have a major infrastructure project, which we're faced with nearly every year, we can't fund it because we can't bond out because we can't exceed the tax cap. So part of the issue is what to do how to fund these things while running an entire town with all the other infrastructure issues that we have. But we're not saying, and I'm not disagreeing that we should be doing this, and we have been working on it year by year, and I guess we're going to have to push harder and just push a couple of things aside in order to get it done sooner. But to just say, wave a magic wand and say, come up with $300,000 this year and go ahead and do that, that's not the way it works when you're under this burden of the cap. Yes, sir, in the back.
Well, so it sounds like you're saying that the only solution is property taxes first. And I think there needs to be different things done at the state level to come up with income for all of this, besides just the property tax. Because, for example, I moved here in 2005. My taxes were $5,000. In 2016, my taxes were $9,000. Now,
Could you come up to the mic,
imagine
please?
somebody that's working on a steady income, even within a 5-year span. It's like you're kicking them out of their house.
Right.
They do. And then there can't be a community that way.
What do you-
Excuse me, anybody that wishes to speak, please come up to the microphone.
First, I'd like to thank you for coming back tonight and explaining. But you're explaining the problem, but we're not talking about solutions. And I think you did that the last time too. You explained it very clearly. And it seems like the solutions to the problem, there's several ways to go about it, and we established this the last time. One was to get something done on the state side with the state senator, which seems to be stalemated. 5 years has gone by and nothing's happened. Right, and you seem to say that it's impossible. I don't like the word impossible. You also mentioned that it's possible to get a segment for this area if there's an injustice in the taxes here. And I think everybody agrees that there is a huge injustice in Continental Village in the amount of taxes we pay. Right? That's why everybody is here tonight. And this has been going on for years. And it's time that everybody pulled together, not just state people, board, even people sitting on the school board should be embarrassed to sit on a school board year after year and see an injustice going down and nobody doing anything about it. We need pressure from all angles. And that's what I've got to say. Okay, and maybe you could just say, is there any work being done on creating a segment? That's one of the things.
But just to respond to that before we lose that statement, in 2012, the town did do something, come down and do a reassessment in Continental Village in the Lakeland School District. Yes, yeah, could Brian Kennedy, I'd like to have our assessor stand up. Right, but I'd like to, but we're not the school district.
How many people were here last time, 5 years ago? Most of the people? I think the problem that happened at that point, I know we heard that night, was not, we know we have a high school tax rate and bill here, but when you saw the bills in the other segments, they were all about the same. We simply have a highly taxed, a highly budgeted school district. It's a very good district, but it costs a lot of money. It's like many of the Westchester districts in Rockland and down in southern Westchester. It just costs a lot of money. And equalization does work because when you saw all the tax levels that everybody pays in the different towns, they were all about the same. They're within a couple $100s of each other. And frankly, my opinion is you can do a reval every week. You're still going to have a high tax bill. The problem with this town is that there is such a discrepancy with Garrison, which is right up the street, and Lakeland in the tax rates and what people pay for a kid to get educated in New York State. It's absolutely ridiculous. That is the problem we have. There's not fair taxation. We have a district that doesn't have a high school that pays a fixed amount to Haldane or to O'Neill across the river to educate their kid. They don't have the cost of the infrastructure of running a high school. So it's cheap. So they get away. I'm a beneficiary of that in a second house in Long Island. The Oyster Ponds district out in Suffolk County does not have a high school. It's the same thing. That's the quirk in New York State law. The only solution for New York State, and I don't know education law, is to have these kinds of segments or districts that cross counties or cross towns to merge with the adjacent district. There's no reason in the world that a small town like Philipstown, 10,000 people, should have 3 school districts in it. In fact, we have the part of a 4th district. It should be required. Any school district that has less than, say, I'll just say 1,000 kids, 800 kids, should be required to merge with the adjacent district. This is the problem. You can have revals every week, and it's not going to solve your tax problem. You're going to save $200. Maybe you'll go down 5. You'll go up 5. That's not the problem. You're still going to have $15,000, whatever the average bill is. That is the issue. And to prove that equalization works, you saw that everybody, I have my own spreadsheet from 2006. More or less, everybody in each district paid about $5,000. In 2016, it went up to about $7,900. Almost every district is the same amount of money. One does a reval, the other one doesn't. It doesn't matter. The district costs a lot of money. It's a good school district, and the district doesn't want to spend any more money than they have to because the people that work in the district, they live in those districts. They don't want to tax themselves to death, but that's what it costs to run the districts. So the problem we have here is unfair taxation because of these quirks in the law that allow a district like, say, Garrison, to educate their kids for a certain amount of money, and they have another quirk in their district in that they have a lot of wealthy properties and a lot of vacation homes that don't send kids to school. So it's a net gain for the school district. They're getting tax money and they don't have any kids. So these are the kinds of problems that we have to face. The reval, it's a great idea. It's not going to solve your tax problem. I've been doing this a very long time, I can tell you right now. We already did a reval in '96. That didn't help either. It just shifts it around a little bit. But unless you get to the basic problem, you're not going to solve it. Now, after we met last time, there was a big question mark on everybody's face. What are we going to do? We can't change educational law, or maybe we can. But that's something out of my bailiwick. But what I did after that last meeting, and you'll see from the numbers that I gave the town board, will maybe post it on the website. I looked at the typical houses in this segment versus the houses in Garrison or in Haldane, and decided that, and I was in contact with Steve and John at the time, we decided that because of the high taxes, the typical ranch house, or whatever it was, a colonial, would have sold in this district more than 10% less for the same house in the Garrison district because of the high taxes. So if you can prove that fact, and we did prove that fact, I was able to adjust the segment in Lakeland down 7%, which resulted in a lessening of the shift of the total budget for the school to this segment. Since 2006, the school budget has gone up 6.7% cumulatively. Philipstown's tax burden has gone up 1%. The last 3 years, it went down 2% in 2014. 15 and 16, the tax rates have stayed the same. We are on the right track, but we have an expensive school district. That's the problem. All right? Reval is not the answer. That can help. It makes it transparent. Yes, my house is $300,000. It says $300,000 on the bill. Great. Is that going to solve the burden of the school bill you have? No, it's not going to solve it. You might, as I said, you might go down a few $100s. You might go up a few $100s. But until we solve these other problems, that's not the answer. How do we do that? We get our legislators to perhaps try and change the law. As I said before, these small districts that don't have high schools should be required to merge into the adjacent districts. Or any town that's under 10,000 people should be required to have one school district. I mean, you can't make this up. New York State is the most complicated taxing jurisdiction in the world. We've got overlapping everything. We've got thousands of authorities, water districts. I mean, Continental Village, look at your bill. in January. This is crazy. Why do they do it so cheaply down south? Because things are done on large counties, Connecticut too, very large counties. One school district, one fire department, one water authority. That's it. New York State, we have villages. It's just endless. It's absolutely, you couldn't make this more complicated if you tried. And this is the problem we have in New York State. This is why people work in New York State when they can, and as soon as they stop working, they can't afford to be here. They go down south. How many times have I heard at my counter, I'm leaving, I'm getting out of here. I can't afford it. I'm retiring and I'm getting out. And you go down to South Carolina, you go to Florida, how do they do it? They have kids they educate. Their taxes are, a third or less. That's the reason. We have no efficiency here, and it's crazy. And we all know it. So, the only thing we can do, as I said, we did what we had to do then. I can look at that again. That's not the be and all answer. The real problem is the level of school budget. But you know what? It's a very, very good school district. And as I said, a lot of people have come to me and said, I don't care about the taxes. I want my kid to go to Lakeland, But for the seniors and people that don't have kids in school anymore, it's a real burden to stay here and pay those taxes. Yes, I agree. But it's not that much different than any other school district in Westchester. So I don't know what the answer is otherwise, but there you go. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Paula Clare. I have a couple of questions and something to also add to the mix. I looked at the last column on the Garrison on the Lakeland School District equalization. The valuation compared to the sale price of the property. Yeah, and I came up with a rate of 49.8, I believe, as opposed to our equalization rate for the town of 46.5, and I'm wondering if that is indicative of enough of a difference to justify a special equalization rate request. That's number one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, what Paula refers to, there is a process known as a special equalization rate, and a request can be made for that. It's got to be made 180 days before the levy date. So if the town wanted to ask for something like that, it would have to be filed no later than March 1st. Whether that would be indicative, whether you would be successful, I don't know. Because the way the process, or what the process says, is essentially that you have to present information that shows that at least one segment would have a change in its levy of a minimum of 10%. And whether that threshold would be made, I don't know. It would really depend on what documentation is submitted and what the findings are. That's all I could offer at this point.
Okay. And also, I wanted to ask you to describe how you come up with the equalization rate in the town of Philipstown. How many properties do you look at, and how do you do it?
There are really two tracks for equalization in New York State. One is for places that reassess property. And again, in that case, we work with the municipalities to help assist them in doing the reassessment, guiding them through the process. Since Philipstown doesn't do a reassessment, our analysis is really based on two separate items. Since Philipstown, like most municipalities, or virtually all of them, have the vast majority of its value in residential properties, we try to do, well, we don't try, we do a sales ratio study, and where there is sufficiently good property inventory, we do what's known, the jargon is computer-assisted mass appraisal. We try to build a model. It's all intended to try to determine an estimate of the average level of assessment of those properties. For non-residential properties, and in the case of Philipstown, the next highest segment of value is in commercial property. So we do a very limited number. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's probably about a dozen appraisals that are randomly selected. And from that, an average level of assessment for commercial properties is determined. The other two types of properties we look at are vacant and agricultural lands and utilities. And in Philipstown, both of those segments are so small that the process does not look at them because they're so small relative to the whole value of the roll that it's not considered consequential. Essentially, when we do the analysis I described, the appraisals for the commercials, the sales ratio studies and whatnot for the residential, we provide our analysis to the town's assessor. The town assessor is free to give us feedback on the work we've done. The town assessor is free to provide his own analysis and say, look, I'd like you to consider this. I'm not sure if that you and I are getting the same results, so take a look at this. Bottom line is that ultimately the town decides on a particular level of assessment that they feel is appropriate for the entire town each year. And if we are able to confirm that number within a reasonable tolerance, that becomes the equalization rate. So that's a thumbnail version of how we do equalization for Philipstown.
So when you do the appraisals of the property, you don't make any you don't determine a difference whether it's in the Lakeland School District or in one of the other school districts, right?
That's
so
correct.
How many properties do you, residential properties do you normally use in your study?
The answer would be it all depends on the volume of arm's length sales. I don't honestly remember offhand. I would have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
But the number can change from year to year.
Right. So my point there is that if you're looking at mainly properties that are outside the segment, the rate is going to be artificially high for the segment. I mean, just in this small portion that you gave us, we're at 49.8, 3.5 points higher, closer to real value than the town rate. So.
Yeah, and again, remember that the legal structure for this says that equalization rates have to be established at the town level because the town is the assessing unit.
Right.
So again, the law says that regardless of what percentage of value a town chooses to assess its properties at, they're all supposed to be the same. That's why this work is done at the town level, because legally, the town, and any town for that matter, is the assessing unit, and legally, the percentage of value should be the same for all properties in the town. And the point that you're getting at is really just another reason why, well, maybe there's a need for a reassessment. And again, Brian and the supervisor explained why the town recognizes that, but why the logistics haven't allowed it to happen.
You know, or I don't know if the difference is enough, but maybe for a special equalization rate.
Well, again, all I can say there is I don't know the answer to that. In the procedures, it clearly says that the result has to be a change of at least 10% to the share of tax levy of at least one of the segments. Whether that would provoke that or produce that, I don't know.
I don't know either. And the other thing I want to mention, and this is Bob D. brought this to my attention and to everybody's attention at a previous meeting. One of the reasons that our taxes are so much higher than Yorktown and Cortland is that they get almost double the star allotment than we do. And I had talked to John today to verify that because I just wanted to understand it. Yeah, and so that's not considered when you.
Excuse me, can I say something about that?
Okay, but that's not when. No, well.
Let me explain.
Brian, you're gonna have to go up to the microphone.
Wait, I just want to just say one more thing before you continue. When you did the comparisons of the taxes of the towns, that wasn't factored in, right? The star allotment for each town. Okay, so if Cortland and your town are getting a lot more star money than we are, and you said that Westchester does get more than.
Sales price, this gentleman referenced a calculation.
Right.
The way Star.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
okay, thank you.
The way Star works, the way Star works is that there is a factor known as a sales price differential factor. So when Star was written, the language, there's a part of the language that says, look, Star is going to, or the calculation of Star is going to look at the median statewide selling price, and then it's also going to look at the median selling price by county. And in recognition of higher valued areas of the state, where a county's median selling price is higher than the statewide selling price, there will be something known as a sales price differential factor, which is applied to the Star exemption amount. And I should have printed it out. I didn't. For 2016, I think the sales price differential factor for Westchester County it's about 2.96, and in Putnam County, I believe it's 1.6 and change. And again, it's a.
Can I simplify
Yeah.
it for a minute?
Go ahead.
The Star, look, the Star amounts that you get off your bill is directly correlated with the amount of taxes you pay. All right. The Garrison Star amount that they get off their tax bill is about $500 or $545, something like that. Their tax rate per thousand is about $20 a thousand. All right. So you got $20 a thousand they're paying. They get $545 off. Haldane, you're paying about $35 a thousand, and you're getting about $850 off. And then in Lakeland, you're paying $57 or $58 a thousand, and you're getting $1,300 off. These are basic Star numbers. So you're getting $1,300 off here, but you're paying a higher tax. In Garrison, you're paying a much lower tax, and you're getting a lower Star. It's just it's a correlation. There's nothing funny about it. It is absolutely correctly done. Yeah.
I have a formula here from Susan Savage, who's a assistant deputy commissioner for state. She gave me the formula. Okay. This column looks great. When you say 13,000, everybody pays 13,000 or like that. You know, we're only a couple of $100 off from everybody. 13,000 tax. On the 500,000. I'm talking about the last column here you have. I'll go about the last column you have here. It says, you know, it only looks like we're only a couple of $100 off. Everybody's
What about page
13,000.
8, Bob?
Yeah, page 8, right, page 8, where it says 2015 school tax, 13,000 to. It looks like we're only a couple $100 off, and it's everything was hunky dory. Everybody's room knows that's not correct. Okay, it looks great on paper, but it's really not. And street-wise, it's not happening. Now, as far as the Star. I happen to get the Enhanced Star, but the Star on the Enhanced Star, same formula. She gave me the formula. It took a while to get it, but I got it. What they do is they completely reverse the formula. What you're using formula for houses, you use like for all of Garrison and Philipstown, right? The value? I mean, like, right?
If you're talking about the equalization rate, yes, that's townwide.
Okay, right. Now, what they do for that, they take all the houses that were sold, I have it here, 3-year average at Putnam was 326,000. So include all that. Okay, they take all the houses in Westchester that were sold, and that comes to 588,000. Now what they do is, in Yorktown and Cortland, it includes all the houses that were sold in Scarsdale and all those places down south, okay, where there's 10, 20, $30 million homes. So they get twice the amount of Star and Enhanced Star that we get. And this is a fact, okay? I happen to get an Enhanced Star. I have friends both in Cortland and in Yorktown, Enhanced Star. They get just about double the Enhanced Star. I get like 2,500. They get 5,000. So this column that you have here, it looks great, but in essence, doesn't work. Now, somebody has said something about work with the government and all like that. I said to my wife, let's try that. Let's try it on a small scale. Okay. What we did was, we pay the taxes in half. You get your first bill in September, we pay from Lakeland, and then they let us, second half is in February. Okay. So I paid it today. I paid the first half, and on time. So for the second half, for giving me that luxury of paying the second half, it's a $300 charge. They call it a fee. Okay? So in the last meeting we had, there was a woman here, a young woman here from Putnam, tax person who was here. I asked her what that fee was, and she says, well, that's to do with paperwork. Now, I have a friend of mine in in Yorktown, a friend of mine in Cortland, who pay their taxes in half. They don't pay this fee. Okay? So I said, let's do something about it. So I wrote a letter to someone in Gallup, and wrote a letter to Sue Serino's office, and both of you called my home and spoke to my wife. My wife wrote the letters, okay? And she explained the thing, and she said, is there any way for at least to get that reduced so when we go pay the bill, we don't have to pay that $300 or $400 fee? And both these offices said it was a great idea. How's that going? Oh, sure, stand up.
That was actually brought to Senator Serino's attention.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you all know, but the senator is in the process of, there's a bill coming through where seniors at the age of 70 will have a freeze on their school taxes. No, that's happening. There's a bill.
To the microphone.
I'm sorry. Usually my voice is loud enough. With 4 kids, usually everyone can hear me, so I apologize. There is a bill, and I believe Assembly, you probably understand, there's a bill going around right now that is coming through the Senate where at the age of 70, your school taxes are going to be frozen. So there will not be school tax at the age of 70. So we did hear that concern, and that is going to happen. Okay? So that, I don't have that tax bill number on me, but I can, if anybody calls the office on Monday, I can give you the Senate bill. That's where that's being recognized.
Okay. How'd you make out with getting these $300 fee?
We are working on that. I don't have that.
Just, excuse me. If we could stop the sidebar chit-chat so we can hear what's going on up front, and we're going to move it along so other people can have a chance to either ask their question or make their statement.
All right, well, I appreciate you for working on it anyway. 'Cause I paid my extras for $300 today anyway, so maybe next year it'll be different. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Kathy Corey. I've lived here for 35 years, and I'm a realtor also. I have a question about the taxable assessed value for Philipstown. Now, you get that from the sales of all the homes in Philipstown for 1 year. Is that correct?
Okay, if I understand the question right, and it's the taxable assessed value, no, that's not coming from the sales. That's actually coming from each town's assessment roll. It's the cumulative amount of assessed value that's considered taxable. In other words, not subject to exemption, forgive me.
But do they get that from all 3 school districts? I mean, I thought that our town increase for the Lakeland school taxes is based on the sales for 1 year in the town.
I think what you may be referring to is the equalization rate. The equalization rate, sure, that's established town-wide,
town.
and yes, it would be a consideration of sales for the entire town,
Right.
because it's the town that's the assessing unit.
Would it make a difference if we had our own segment and you only consider the sales from Continental Village, the Lakeland district?
The answer is I don't know, but that's the process that Paula, the lady who spoke here
Yeah.
back there, that's the process that she was referring
And
to.
the town board has to get that going, the 6 months or 180 days?
I can provide a copy of the procedures. I think typically it's something that's submitted by a municipal executive.
I think we did that a number of years ago.
But you're talking about a special assessment district.
No, it's something called a segment equalization rate. Essentially, the idea here is that somebody would submit documentation to try to prove that the equalization rate for a school district segment is significantly different than the rest of the town. Well, I think what Paula because I didn't honestly remember this, I think this was before my time at least, Paula told me that this had been done prior in the years preceding the countywide project for 96.
Correct.
So it was done back in the early
It
90s.
was done.
Yeah.
As I said, you can do that. And it might result in maybe a
Fine.
savings.
Brian, maybe you want to come.
But, you know, you could talk about equalization and STAR all night long. I'm going to reiterate this. You have a big budget in the school district. That's not going to solve the problem.
Well, I just
It's going to help, perhaps.
I just thought
but-
that the multi-million-dollar homes that.
You know, you'd be surprised. You know, most.
I think that a reassessment would pay off because the people.
Well,
that
it would
have
pay
the
off
more
to
expensive
to a
homes
certain extent, but
are
you
much lower.
you would be surprised. Most of the people that go to grievance and small claims, you know where they come from? Garrison.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of properties that have proved that they are overassessed in Garrison, believe it or not.
There are.
And I can tell you,
many
I-
that are under.
Yes, and there's a lot
Very
that are
many.
overassessed
And you
as
would
well.
get money.
So I don't think that's the answer, and it's not going to solve your tax problem, and you might save a couple $100, but that's about it. I can tell you right now.
Save a couple $100, right?
Take a couple $100.
You can take a couple $100, fine. But, you know, if you want to really solve the problem, you have to do what I suggested before. We've got to do merging of districts. We've got to streamline the process in New York State. That's the number one issue. You know, the budget for Lakeland schools since 2006 has gone up 40%, right? 35%, excuse me. Philipstown has paid 40%. Okay, so there's a 5% differential from the actual budget that has gone up. But in the last 6 years, we've gone down. This segment has gone down. Look at your bills, and you'll see that. So this is not going to solve the problem. It's going to help, but the real problem is a lot bigger than that. It's bigger than revaluations. It's bigger than special segments. And, you know, and I don't know why we keep talking, and the stars, and, you know, equalization, that's not going to help, okay? Then you have to ask your legislators for that. How do you do that? That's a good question. Yeah. They have to agree to merge themselves.
And would Lakeland do without our $6 million?
We just want to say,
I think that we're continually going over the same thing over and over again. I've been to one previous meeting, and I think the bottom line is changing legislation, changing something so that we get fair taxation. I work in the Haldane school. I know the houses in that area. I drive by them every day. And I think that, from my understanding, a lot of those houses, where is the lady that was the realtor?
yeah, she's right there.
They're under assessed. The multi-million. So why aren't we doing something about that? So why can't we get that going? Why can't we change the laws so that we don't have this problem? Because that's what I'm hearing tonight.
Yeah, no. We're hearing such unfair things about people owning property. Why is school tax still coming from properties? I think it should come from somewhere else that comes from something else in our world, to stop saying it's counting on assessment or how much your house costs. And I think we should really think about how we're going to change the world and our country by not going after people whose somebody's house up there is so wealthy and somebody who is living on a $50,000 house and paying high taxes. It's just not fair. And I know a school needs the money, and I was a teacher, and I cared about how, things happened. But I tell you, I think that we have to figure this out in a big way to change the way they're paying for things. And this is why we got up here together.
And I teach also. I teach at Haldane, and it's an excellent school, if I may say so myself. I'm very dedicated to those kids. But this is a problem, and it's bigger than all these little things that
Yes.
we're talking about. We've got to change the law.
about where, but we just feel like we have to talk about this and really make it happen. Because if we want changes in our world, we really have to work together as a community, not one-on-one or whatever, but how we have to do something about it. Because as he said, this is what's happening. We're just going to have to live with it. And I think we have to live with something different. And I think that our senators and our communities, we have to fight for a different, new way of doing things. And that's why I got up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
My name is Josh, and I've lived here for 11 years. What I want to say is this: it is an excellent school system. I have two daughters that go there, and I love it. And I think that a lot of the talk, like they said, is about the property taxes and how do we change that. How you're going to impact that? I think within a year, maybe you'll save $100 or $200, but the next year it's going to go back up, and you're going to be back to square one. I think part of this solution needs to come at the state level, and we have to change the laws because we need to start chipping away at the amount of levy that's basically associated with property taxes. So whether it's through sales tax, like Westchester does a little bit, whether it's through income, there needs to be, part of the levy needs to come from other places at the state level. And also reassessing the district and having possibly Garrison join the Lakeland School District. But if anybody can give some answers around that.
This is going to be the last one.
Since I got involved with this here, I took my tax bill before any exemptions and compared it with 3 other houses. The same builder, he built all the same houses, same blueprint, and there's about $1,000 difference. I'm at 84 and they're at 74. And that they have no exemptions.
Well, we can look at that. We do that all the time.
And I've challenged mine already.
Okay.
And they lowered.
Well, there you go.
But
you're always going to find somebody lower than you, and I can find 5 people that are higher than you. But I mean,
But these-
the bottom line is
here, 3 of these are in town of Cortland.
Oh,
And they're
Portland's different. Okay, well,
$1,000.
wait a
Yeah,
second.
but wait a minute, you're talking equalization, they should be equal.
No, not necessarily, because the town of Cortland may have more expenses than this part of Philipstown. Maybe they have other districts. You know, it could be it's a whole different basis of taxes, because they need perhaps more money than we do. I don't know.
I thought
There's a lot of
you
different
just
districts.
said that equalization puts all the houses the same. It doesn't.
Yeah, again, the example that was in the handout was meant to show a house of the same value in each of the 6 segments. And again, it assumes no exemptions, because again, if one house has an exemption, clearly it's going to be paying a lower tax than the others. That's why some may call it hypothetical, but the process of apportionment does work. Again, there are a lot of other factors that change the results for individual properties. But if you're trying to compare a property that's not in Lakeland, but in one of those towns, yeah, it's very possible you could see different results, which I think maybe is what Brian was referring to.
2 of these homes.
Different towns have different budgets. So, you know, all things being equal, if we all had the same costs, if every town had the exact same costs, then the taxes theoretically should be similar.
This is only school that I have $1,000 difference.
But that's, you know, they're in another town. I can't, you know, I don't, if you want to compare your house, you compare it to another house that's like yours in this district.
Identical.
No, but in Philipstown. Let's compare it to a house in Philipstown.
I will.
Okay, then you give me a call, and I'll look at it, okay? That's all right, he can come up.
I'm getting a little frustrated because I don't perceive any plan, and I think we need to come up with a plan. So
Well,
I-
before you go on, we haven't
I understand that.
articulated anything
I
yet.
understand.
We've been
So,
listening.
I understand your point that whatever the town does will be marginal, but I'll take $200. Okay? So I think the town has to. Well, okay, I'll take that risk, but the point is, right now, it's unequitable. If it fixes it marginally, if it has a marginal benefit, I'll take it. Well, I disagree. And I think that if the town doesn't do something to help this, because the town can do something much quicker than the state can. My perception is, to get anything done in New York State takes a long, long time. And if the town doesn't do anything, we'll be back here in 5 years saying exactly the same thing.
We did something. And as I said, you look at your taxes the last 3
Yeah,
years.
I understand that.
You went down in
But
taxes.
the point is,
okay?
there are still inequities that the town can fix,
Well,
that
we've done
systemic
a lot.
inequities.
We've
So,
done what we can do, I think.
so I'm asking the town to come up with a plan to do whatever the town can do to help us out, right? And I like to see something in writing, something emailed to all of us that says, here's a 5-point plan, a 10-point plan, here's how long it's going to take us, here's how much it's going to cost us. If it requires us to do a total reassessment, that's what we'll do. If we can do something else that achieves the same goal, we'll do that. But I want to see something in a short time period, maybe a month or two, that is a plan that the town can do. That's point one. Point two, I think the state has to kick in also. I'd like our representatives to come back to us and tell us, here's what we can do. So your idea, Sue Serino's idea of the no increases for people over 70, is that something that,
Yeah, it's Senate Bill
that's a new thing?
1480. It's Senate Bill 1480 from Senator LaBelle's bill.
So is that a new thing? Is that something that's new?
I don't think it's, the governor has not signed it yet.
It,
It's there.
it's passed?
No, the governor did not sign it.
Right, but has a, so it's just a proposal now?
It hasn't passed.
Right, okay. So is that something that's been proposed that's new in the last couple of months? That
In the last couple of years, yes.
couple of years, okay. So there's that, and there's also the idea that of merging districts, which is, I think, is what your point is. That's a fundamental, that gets at the fundamental problem of merging districts so that we don't have all these inequities. So maybe I asked our two representatives to look into that and see what they can do along those lines for, because it sounds like that's a statewide solution. So it's in your area. Come back to us and say, here's what we can do along those lines. Here's maybe what other states have done. Maybe put your staff to work on that, and to come back to us and say, here's the legislation that we can put forward to implement this idea. All right. I understand that's going to take much longer, but I was telling somebody before, if you look at what I've paid in the 15 years that I've been in Philipstown, in Continental Village, compared to someone I know who lives in Garrison, I've paid between $50,000 and $75,000 more in taxes than that person, who has a house that's worth 3 times as much as my house. Okay, so it sounds like that's the solution. That's the fundamental solution, is to merge these districts so we don't have these stark inequities, and that's in your area. And I'm asking you to help us get together, work together, and come back to us and say, okay, here's legislation we can put forward. Here's who we're going to reach out to across party lines and get this thing done so the people in this area can afford to stay here and not have to move to Florida or North Carolina.
Thank you.
Is it all right?
Yes, Henny, by all means.
Actually, my foot went to sleep. Just on the consolidation issue, I was a teacher in Virginia in a countywide school district, and I think it's great. It's a great solution. I've had many, many town meetings in my district on consolidation of schools, consolidation of courts, consolidation of communities, and it's tough. I'm sorry, it is just tough. And the way it works now is this individual school district. I think back in the 90s, you had a vote here on combining Haldane and Garrison.
It never got to a vote.
Never got to a vote. So there wasn't.
This happened 2 times
Okay.
First time, Haldane didn't want to merge with Garrison.
Uh-huh.
And the second time it came up, the opposite happened.
Right.
But I know the school districts have to agree to do this.
They have to
But
agree.
can't you, is it in your bailiwick to propose legislation to gear a law to this town for a population of under 10,000 that has multiple districts, or districts that have less than 1,000 children, to be forced to merge with the adjacent district in the town?
Okay,
That's
probably
the
have to
answer.
be a local home rule message that you'd have to give me, and that might also be more of a problem. There was a suggestion, I can't remember which governor, maybe it was Elliott Spitzer or it was Cuomo, that suggested that if any school district, as you had said before, was a certain number of students, that it had to merge with something else. And I'm sorry, it didn't get support at that point.
They also had a proposal where they were going to pay the school districts a certain amount of money to
Right.
encourage the merging. And of course, nobody did. It wasn't enough money, and but
Right. We have money available for consolidation of services to develop a plan. I think actually you're all looking at that from the town's perspective on courts.
Courts, building
Courts.
departments, it's more on building departments right now.
Right. It's called change, and it's hard. But if the school districts, I mean, I'd be glad to put a bill in, but there would have to be, my colleagues in the rest of the state are not going to support it unless there's support from down here, because they're not going to tell, if you're up in Buffalo, you're not going to tell people in the Lakeland School District or Garrison School District what to do. So if there was a home rule message, that, is a possibility. But I just want to say from the state perspective, and there are a lot of good things that have come out tonight and things we need to think about. But what the state has tried to do under Governor Cuomo, and some people in this room may like the tax cap and some people may not like the tax cap. But the tax cap has, because I don't think there's been any overriding of the tax cap in any of the school districts. They tried to do that in Briarcliff, Bronxville, or Scarsdale, and they were turned down by the public. So I don't think any of our school districts have gone over. It's not always 2%. Sometimes it's below, sometimes it's above. It depends on the value of the properties during that period of time, or if a business went in and added more accessibles to the community. But when we hear about what's happened over a number of years in the Lakeland School District, there has been a tax cap. If there hadn't been a tax cap, I can't imagine what really would have happened in that sense. But we have been trying, besides a tax cap, and maybe we need, I've thought from the assessment perspective, I would love to see us exempt if you wanted to do reassessment of property from the tax cap. But the problem I have, you have to look at the whole state. And there Westchester and Suffolk are the worst counties for ever reassessing property. Putnam is much better. But the rest of the state seems to do it that much more often. And I'm not so sure that they want to send a lot of money down to the people who haven't done it. So, that's a little bit of a problem. We do have some money in the budget that helps with reassessment. But the other communities have squirreled away money over a couple of years to be able to get to that point. Maybe you can't do it all at one time, but to say, and the residents are going to have to say, well, we won't do this and we won't do that. I mean, it's all priorities, and it depends what the priority is in the community. What the state has been trying to do over these years is try to give money back to residents to help them with their school property tax. And under Governor Pataki, we started the STAR program. It's over $3 billion. Somebody can correct me, but I think it's over $3 billion at this point that we send back to everybody. That's state money paying for your schools. Now we have Enhanced STAR, which we started. And that's I think it's a wonderful program, and it grows. There's a little CPI in there, and it grows, and it's to help people who need help more with their school tax. And, that is very helpful. We started the next we have so many programs going on and so many checks going out and some checks not going out. I found out actually in Cold Spring and Philipstown that you haven't gotten your checks, but I've talked to the tax office. They're due in 3 to 5 weeks. Don't hold me to it, but you know, I checked out a couple of names of people that told me that they hadn't gotten their check, but it will come. But we also have that's for the tax freeze, and that's asking your localities, your school districts, your county to keep within the tax freeze. It's an artificial thing that we're putting on everybody, and you get a check back. Now, in the future, we're going to go into the circuit breaker program so that people that have a certain income will get more help, again, with their taxes. So we haven't switched to the state taking over the cost of educating kids. And Kevin Cahill had a bill on it. I actually had a town meeting at the Desmond Fish Library about 3 or 4 years ago on it. Again, you know, it's building support. We have 150 assembly people, 63 senators, and it's building support with everybody to get this going. But there are a lot of people that didn't like the idea, because what would have happened is that there would have been the state of New York, if it's going to be funded by the state, would say, this is the amount of money it should cost to educate a child. And that's what we're going to give you back. If you want to add more in tax revenues because you want to do something more for your students, then that would be on your property tax. So we could get back, you know, into a good discussion about that. I know a lot of people in my district seem to be supportive of it, but there were curtailments of it. But next year we'll start with a circuit breaker. So, you know, they have a lot of different programs. It costs the state of New York billions and billions of dollars for this money that we give back to you. Maybe you'd like us just not to take it in the first place and not give it back. But it is on state income, which is not property tax. So that's really good. I think that's good for you, because the person that is the millionaire is really contributing more to the state coffers, and it's coming back to other people who are not millionaires. So, you know, that is actually a kind of good policy, I think. And if we can keep moving that along, we can't move it fast enough because we don't have enough money. We can't manufacture money. So, you know, there is a balance. But there's some good things that are happening along with things that we need to do. But thank you.
All right, with that, Justine, you're gonna get the last word, and then we're gonna.
My name is Justine Bruno. I was involved with the Continental Village Property Owners Association. Just want to say thanks for coming our way. We really appreciate it. I think I could speak for everybody here. With regard to your question to you, as far as how many homes are in Philipstown, I can't tell you how many in Philipstown, but as far as Continental Village goes, everybody knows it involves 3 towns, Putt Valley, Cortland Manor, and Philipstown. Putt Valley has approximately 80 homes. Cortland Manor is close to 270, and Philipstown is close to 600. That's last count when I was involved. I haven't been up to date. It's a little bit more. I might be off by 10. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
I want to mention something to add to what Sandy was saying, and to her credit, in her many years with the state, there are programs that are available, and we've used them, these local efficiency grant programs that call for just what we're talking about: consolidation studies, implementation programs through the Department of State. And we've started the process. We started the process with the courts. I don't know if you remember, a few years ago we started it with the fire departments. It's very difficult. We don't always get the support. It's like pulling teeth, and all of these things that we're talking about tonight are great ideas, but when your government sets out to do it, we often need your support in getting it through. I mean, when we say we've tried, we're doing this, I mean, it might call for going up to Albany and you know, showing our needs to them, just as we're here today. So I just wanted to say, you know, there are lots of great things. There are lots of great state programs that we have used and will continue to, but it is difficult to get, because there's always resistance to any kind of change.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to stand up for a minute because my back is killing me from sitting in this chair. But at any rate, you know, these are tough discussions, but they're important discussions, and we don't mind coming out and listening, you know, and everybody says, well, we do this every couple of years, but it does have an effect. The year after we had this last discussion, we were able to come down and do that, take a look at the people in the Lakeland School District, and it did have an impact. Their taxes went down. So that did have an impact. And when we have these discussions again, we'll be taking another look. We'll also look at the reval. But again, we are under that New York State property tax cap and the tax freeze. If we exceed the cap of the freeze, you're not going to get your New York State tax rebate check. So it's a double-edged sword. You know, we can take a look at these things. We have been looking at an in-house reval. We've been working on it slowly. I guess according to everybody here, not quickly enough for you. But as Brian was saying, that's not going to be the magic bullet. It's going to take fundamental structural change in the way school districts are formed. We have too many districts in Philipstown, and the fact that when everybody looks at Garrison, they say, oh my, you know, you have this, what appears to be a wealthy community paying a much lower rate. And because they don't have a high school and they're just paying on the students they send off to high school, that's why the rate is so much lower. But that would take more than the town of Philipstown. We don't set school district lines. We will take a look at things that we can do, though. I promise you that. We'll hasten up doing the reval. We will take another look at the Lakeland School District this year, and we'll continue to talk to everybody because I think it's important to hear from you, and that does spur action. We did it before, and we will keep doing it. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. We're going to continue on with our meeting. If you want to stay, you're welcome to, but if you want to give us a call, we're 265-5200. I'm always around. I'm always available to listen. If you want to meet with me, you know, you can call and schedule a meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Brian, thank you.
To adjourn?
Let me text my kid.
Right, review of the minutes, special meeting of July 28, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye.
I wasn't there, abstain.
Okay. Monthly town board meeting of August 4th, 2016. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Special meeting of August 26th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Committee, oh no, we are skipping over committee reports and moving right to the agenda.
Okay, first item on the agenda is a resolution. First item on the agenda.
You don't have to yell.
There's nobody here. I'm tired. Okay, the first, can you hear me? Okay. Is a resolution amending the town schedule of traffic regulation to impose a no parking regulation signs on both sides of Indian Brook Road between Beverly Warren Road and Moog Road, and this is a roll call vote.
Okay, everybody should be familiar with this by now. I've gotten a million calls, spoken to the sheriff any number of times. We have the signs up. We need to codify this in order to make it more effective so we can actually, well, they're acting on it now, but we need to make this official. So if I could get a motion on the resolution.
So moved. Second.
Councilman Montgomery.
Aye.
Councilman Van Tassel.
I vote aye.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilman Leonard.
Aye.
And I vote aye. The record shows unanimous vote.
Okay, the next item is a resolution scheduling a public hearing on a proposed local law to amend Town Code Chapter 163, Vehicles and Traffic, to codify the existing town vehicle and traffic law and to permit the addition of further traffic regulations by resolution. Now, you've had the local law before you. It does not have to be referred. We can schedule the public hearing. I would advise at least 2 weeks, or maybe the next town board meeting, and it's a roll call vote.
Yeah, I think we'll do it at the next town board meeting. Is everybody's okay with that?
Yeah.
All right.
At 7.
We'll do it at 7:30.
It's October 6th.
The public hearing.
So we'll have the public hearing at the town board meeting, October 6th at 7:30. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pushback on this. Roll call vote. Oh, could I get a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Councilman Leonard.
Aye.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilman Van Tassel.
Aye.
Councilwoman Montgomery.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Okay, the next item is a resolution awarding the Washburn parking lot project to Landworks Excavating, and that is also a roll call vote.
So this is to move forward with the work at Washburn. that's part of the Fjord Trail. Pretty exciting, not compared to tonight's meeting, but but it's going to be great to get the first anchor leg of the Fjord Trail in place. Next year there'll be a large project happening up the Breakneck end, and then the idea is once they have the anchors in place to connect them. So we did have a bid opening. We went through the entire process. Unfortunately, it was a two-part bid. If we were able to go with another bidder, we could have saved money, but it was just over our grant amount, and there was no mechanism for the state, which is also we're working jointly with on the project to transfer some of the funds to us. So it's going to end up costing more and taking longer, but that's the way things go. At any rate, it's exciting that this project's getting off the ground, and we're going to start work on this probably in about a week, so after we approve this. So if I can get a motion on a resolution awarding the Washburn parking lot bid to Landworks Excavating.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Councilman Montgomery.
Aye.
Councilman Van Tassel.
Aye.
Councilman Leonard.
Aye.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing Supervisor Shea to sign a request that the Village of Nelsonville's Planning Board serve as a lead agency regarding a 3-lot subdivision on Cedar Street Spur. And this is a nunc-pro-tunc because the response had to be submitted by September 5th.
Okay, this is adjacent to the Cedar Street Cemetery. It's actually going to, if anyone's been out there, and I walked it today, the lot lines are right across that cemetery road, right underneath that big fallen tree that borders the cemetery. So those property lines, this is property that Haldane School had owned, I believe, and sold it off, and now there's a proposal to put 2 houses in there. It is in Nelsonville, so it's within their purview. So this is just to say that we have no issues with that. But there's going to be a big change up there. That road that you walk in is going to become the road for that little subdivision. Yeah. And that means that the trail to James Pond is going to be...
They're going to preserve James Pond.
We're going to preserve James Pond, but that trail is going to be gone. That Brave Scout trail.
The end of the trail, not the whole trail. The whole trail will be gone. I mean,
From the time you leave Cedar Street until you get to James Pond will be gone.
That road will not increase, correct? It's not going to get wider than it is, right? To where it would encroach on the cemetery?
If it gets wider, it'll have to go north because it's the cemetery boundary is there, but it's going to be right up against that cemetery. I just want everybody to be aware of that. But this is all, again, this will be the purview of the Nelsonville Planning Board. So with that, could I get a motion on the resolution?
so moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Okay, the next is a resolution authorizing Supervisor Shea to sign the filming permit for CP Movie Incorporated for Monday, September 12th, 2016.
Does anyone have a starring role in this? These are good for us. It's good to bring these people to the village. They wind up eating locally. We get a small fee out of it, and it works all the way around, I think.
It's like minimal impact.
Yeah, it is. Generally, they are very,
yeah,
no one ever knows it's going on.
There's like one camera.
Yeah.
Fine.
And
No
I-
lifts or anything.
I'm gonna do a filming bomb, they call it, jump in the back. Could I get a motion on the resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign the permit?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
The next is a resolution amending the return of a completion bond for Carol Fisher from $15,890.41 to $15,000 even. When the town board last passed the resolution for the $15,890, that had included interest. But what the auditors wanted to see is the base amount, which was $15,000.
Okay. All right, this seems to be a technicality on return of escrow, or completion bond, excuse me. So if I could get a motion on the resolution.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. It has Andy Morandi's, the chairman's stamp on it, so that's reassuring.
The next item is a resolution authorizing Town Clerk Miranda to advertise for the Wetlands Inspector's vacancy.
I guess it's appropriate to advertise. We did speak with Max Garfinkel last night, who is currently on the CB. He seems eminently qualified, completely up to speed on these things. I don't know what Bob, what was your opinion?
Yeah, no, I thought he's definitely qualified for the position. He's got a
Yeah,
very
Nancy,
good
how did you
background. He's
feel
been
about him?
doing this, he does this every day.
I mean, Max is a great resource. He'll be a great fit for the town. He already knows the town inside and out, having spent his whole life in the wetlands, literally here. So it's great. It's a difficult thing. I just want to say, Dave Klotzel will be greatly missed. A wealth of knowledge. I know this isn't the appropriate time, but I can't help but it's a little difficult. He was a great friend and just an amazing resource for the town, and that's
Yeah, to lose somebody that quickly, to see them on a Friday and then have them pass away over a weekend, and somebody with that depth and that ability to, work with the public so well. I mean, he is going to be greatly missed, there's no doubt.
I also wrote to Dave's wife in behalf of the town and expressed to her, Dave's fantastic leadership. He was very inspirational to me when I started on conservation years ago, and showed me the real purpose of why it's so important to protect our environment. So I'm going to miss him greatly.
If I could just add, somebody that works in the community, in the construction industry, you hear a lot of complaints about, the inspectors that come out. And David always seemed to come out very strong, but once you got to know him and he got to know you, the cooperation was there, and David was very reasonable to work with, and he is going to be sorely missed. So.
Yeah, one of those a guy who can exercise common sense.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's something that isn't
getting the
short
job
supply.
done as well.
Exactly, yeah. But I think he realized we're in the business of facilitation, as I always say. We want to help people through the process. So
with
he was
great
expert.
expertise, with really great expertise. And,
Exactly.
I know Max, and I think he can do a great job.
Yeah, and Max has he's got the credentials as far as his education. He currently works for state parks, doing wetlands for them, doing wetlands inspections and studies. This is his area of expertise, so.
This isn't a salaried position, so we are hiring a consultant, basically, and I don't know, it's good to advertise, but I don't think we're required to.
No, but it would be good to talk to some people and see if we're
There's a lot of
completely bowled over by someone else. It'd be tough to do. The bar's been set high already. So,
Yeah.
but I would like to talk to some other people.
There's a lot of great resources out there, people with a lot of knowledge and care.
All right. So, if I get a motion on the resolution for the advertisement.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a resolution accepting the plans for the East Mountain Road South Drainage Project. We have a letter from the Highway Superintendent. The resolution does read that the town board hereby accepts the plans submitted for the East Mountain Road South Drainage Project as prepared by Ron Gaynor and approved by Carl Frisenda, Highway Superintendent.
I had a couple of conversations with Carl about this. It's obviously necessary. This is residual damage actually from Irene. So things we have to address. And, again, it's a dirt road. It's got to be maintained. We had the recommendation of the town engineer and the highway superintendent. That's good enough for me. So I don't know if there's any comment on that. Yeah. So if I could get a motion on a resolution accepting the plans for the work on East Mountain South.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
The next is a resolution, which is a Type 2 seeker review for the East Mountain Road South Drainage Project.
Every road project, we do have a secret process we need to follow. It's a type 2 action, so essentially we're just authorizing or affirming that this is a type 2 action. So if I get a motion affirming the type 2 seeker action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. I vote aye.
The next is a resolution authorizing Supervisor Shea to sign an agreement with Highlands Architecture, PLLC, for architectural services in connection with the renovation and addition to the Town Hall Annex in the Dahlia House in an amount not to exceed $9,000.
That $9,000 amount is, again, a not-to-exceed number. We don't anticipate that it'll go to that. I did have a good meeting with Justin the other day at the house, and with Greg, the building inspector, just to do another walkthrough, answer some basic questions. And now he has the sort of the parameters that he's going to work within so we can get that project moving ahead. We really would, I mean, we need to get that project moving ahead, so. This will be for the architectural services. We did knock a couple things off. We don't need code analysis. We're in the business of code. And, you know, all the other things as far as outside the shell, we're going to handle ourselves. We're looking to get a shell done and then actually advertise for the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical system individually. So I think it'll be more efficient that way. If we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we'll go with design, build on those things. We're looking for one bathroom. This isn't rocket science. So if we could get a motion on the resolution.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a resolution authorizing the use of AKRF planners to conduct wetland inspections in the interim until the vacancy for that position is filled at a rate of pay not to exceed that set forth in the 2016 budget.
We do have a vacancy, as we just talked about, for wetlands inspections since our, the death of David Klotzel. So we do need someone to step in the interim until we do hire a permanent replacement. So I get a.
We're actually meeting tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the town hall with them to help us with enforcement, with preparing of permits that we got to do now. We have.
Right.
It was a very busy time right now. We've had some changes that also involve the DEC, so we really need to just make sure that we're okay going forward because, you know, we're using right now voluntary town, and they've really stepped up. I mean, I'm going to have both Eric and Mark tomorrow at the meeting, and they've really stepped up to help us out tremendously. But
And our
this will be
thanks,
great.
I mean, these are volunteers, so, and with expertise. But we do need to, again, this sort of points out the need to get someone in this position because to have AKRF do it, they're completely qualified to do it, but it is a lot more expensive to have them doing it. So we want to move through this as quickly as we can. We do have to provide the service. We do have to enforce the code. So. All right, if I get a motion on that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Okay, the next item is a resolution authorizing Town Clerk Miranda to advertise for bidders for the Fair Street sidewalk improvements. And this is nunc-pro-tunc as it appeared in the paper yesterday.
Again, this is another portion of the Fjord Trail to take people safely down Fair Street. Right now, it looks as though the project will run to the town line, not go into the county section. The county had some requirements that we couldn't quite meet. Also, the budgeted amount that we have and the money coming through Sandy Galiff's office. Thank you very much. We had a conversation this week. All this money. But we wouldn't be able to do it without this grant that was sponsored by our Assemblywoman, Sandy Galiff. So thanks so much for that. But this will get us to the town line, and then we're going to be looking for future funding for that. That's another project we'd like to get off and running before the winter and get it out to bid. I do want to make sure we get some local bidders too. I know some local people were interested in it. So if I get a resolution on the authorization, nunc-pro-tunc on that advertisement.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Again, thank you, Assemblywoman Gala, for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna add.
Right, yeah.
I'm just gonna add something on, and this is for the town justice. It's the Justice Court Assistant Program application. They need a resolution of support, and it's for courtroom enhancements such as carpeting, the clerk's office and judge's desk, chairs, file cabinets, a conference room table and chairs, and the total amount being submitted is $7,569.65.
I love what's going on in justice. They're out there taking the initiative to get money. They've done it before. They did it for the metal detector. They did it for the door and the bulletproof window. So the fact that they're taking the reins up there is a great help with everything else they do. So I will gladly support that resolution for a letter of support in favor of their grant. So could I get a motion on that? Or go ahead, Nancy.
No, I move to.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And thank you for all the work up there.
We have 10 minutes.
Code Enforcement Monthly Report, $12,877 collected. 23 total number of permits, 10 additions, alteration, and repairs to residential buildings, 13 all other permits, pools, sheds, decks, plumbing, HVAC, etc., 23 COs issued, 2 inspections of public assembly, and 2 inspections of commercial occupancies.
Public assembly. Ooh. Don't even say that. Our thanks to Greg Winter. I think we really, made a big score in getting Greg. I think I've heard nothing but good things, getting a lot of good feedback. So, thanks for the monthly report.
He's responsive too. I've had a lot of calls from people. I bring them right to Greg, and he's taking care of it.
And he's also taking the initiative to take the floodplain coordinator classes, so he'll be our official floodplain coordinator. There's a mystery there.
On the scheduling of the workshops, I was speaking, Glenn came in and was talking to me about ESP, and we need the baseline, and we need the monies for the inspections and everything. I was wondering if you could meet before the 16th. He's going away for 3 weeks after that.
All right, before the 16th?
That's next Wednesday.
Yeah, next Wednesday, he's leaving, 16th is a Friday, isn't it?
Yeah, he's leaving.
So let's
He's leaving on
meet
the
next
16th.
Wednesday then.
At 7:30?
Yes.
Okay.
Nice. I think that's important.
A little bit. Last year.
All right, so we'll meet next Wednesday, and we can also take up any other business that may come before the town board at that point.
One important note, Monday's zoning board meeting will be at the Recreation Center, not at Town Hall. I just want people to be aware of that. I know you posted it.
Yes.
But it's, it should be attended pretty heavily, and it will be at the rec center.
Can you do me a favor? Oh, no, actually, no, forget it. Don't do me any favors. I'm mixing my meetings right now. All right, I want to thank Assemblywoman Gale for coming out, Legislator Scuchamara, Representative from Sue Serino's office for coming tonight. Again, I think it's worthwhile. You got to get out and take your lumps once in a while, and we took a little bit of it tonight, but I think people appreciated it, and we will act on things that we can act on. I think that people got a good sense of why things are the way they are. Obviously, people in Lakeland District, they're feeling it. When you talk about the tax rates going from, 12 to 32 to 56, did Brian say?
Yeah.
56 per thousand. That's not something that is sustainable, so that hurts. So.
Terrific turnout. It was the best we've had out of any of our meetings, so.
Yeah, so I want to thank everybody for coming out. Vacancies, wetlands inspector, we're going to be advertising, so we'll do some interviews on that. Approval of vouchers, general.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Highway.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Continental Village Park District.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Continental Village Water District.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thanks, Celia.
Thanks for the use of the.
Wrap.